Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alistair Gillen. I'm a Growth and Inward Investment Manager at Skills Development Scotland. Welcome along to today's webinar on entrepreneurial mindset, recognising the right attitude for success in yourself and others. It's brought to you by Skills Development Scotland and Entrepreneurial Scotland. We are expecting a few more people to join us, so I'll take a minute or so to go through the kind of housekeeping for today's session, and hopefully by that time all other delegates have joined us and be able to pass over to presenters for today. So just a wee bit of housekeeping before we start. In a minute I'll begin the recording of today's session, which will be available to you all and any colleagues who may have been unable to join us in today's session. In order to ensure the flow of the webinar, we've disabled the microphones and cameras for all attendees during the course of the presentation. However, at the top of your screen, you should all be able to see the Q&A function, which we would encourage you to post any questions throughout the course of the session. And at the end, there'll be time allocated to work our way through those questions and hopefully be able to provide you with a response. If we don't get through them all, we'll certainly follow up with you directly after the session. Any slides, resources that are referred to throughout the course of the session, again, we'll make sure that they are circulated so you have access to them. And we'll also be circulating an evaluation in order to gain feedback on today's session. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Jules Lancastle, who is the Head of Executive Talent at Entrepreneurial Scotland, whose stated purpose is to challenge restless minds to help them benefit the communities. And Jules is obviously very eager because she's just shared, about to share her own screen, and has just taken away my script. So without any further ado, I'll just say that Jules is great, is very eager to speak to all of you, and I will pass over to Jules, and she can introduce the rest of her bio. There we go. Thanks, Jules.
Alistair, I'm so sorry. Off to a flying start.
Not at all.
Hopefully I'm showing our slide now. Thank you, Alistair, for welcoming us. And to everybody on the call, a warm welcome. Delighted that you have joined us for this lunchtime session. If you are using it as a working lunch, enjoy your sandwich. We hope to make the most of your dinner break. And this is the first of 3 webinars that Entrepreneurial Scotland is delivering for Skills Development Scotland. And in this webinar, we're going to begin the process of self-reflection on the topic of entrepreneurial mindset, what it is, how it shows up in entrepreneurial leaders, and how they model it in for others to see. So the second of our webinars in a couple of weeks is going to be focusing on nurturing the culture of entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial teams within organizations. And then finally in March, we've got a session on looking at the value that entrepreneurial leaders place on building connections outside of their own business as they look at how their network becomes their net worth. So just as we, let me just make sure that I've got this going. So today we're going to look at, as I say, entrepreneurial mindset, and we've got a few key takeaways that you'll have seen in the information that was shared. So we're on track to deliver that. And I wanted to start here. I'm quite sure that you are familiar with this type of image around growth mindset. As entrepreneurial leaders, you undoubtedly have this already. A term defined by Carol Dweck, who said that, in a growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent.
Jules, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Are you sharing slides right now?
Yes.
No, nobody is seeing them at this moment in time.
Okay, right. What have we done here? Let's have a look. It worked so well earlier, didn't it? Just bear with me a moment.
There we go.
Is that better?
That's it. Yep.
Apologies, everybody.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. So you've not missed anything, everybody. This is the first slide that we really need to look at. So yes, Undoubtedly, as entrepreneurial leaders, you have growth mindset already. Brains and talent are just the starting point. And it's this view that creates a love of learning and a resilience that's essential for great accomplishment. So if that's our starting point, I think it's worth highlighting that at Entrepreneurial Scotland, we recognise that the answers that entrepreneurial leaders are often seeking usually come from within the room. Our role is simply one of connecting, creating frameworks for practical reflection and self-discovery. So over the next 40 to 50 minutes, my aim is to give you that, a framework of ideas and insight that you can use to actually check in with yourself and ask yourself some questions about your leadership style and about your organisation. We're also going to introduce you to our case study guest, Grant Curry, towards the second part of this presentation, who's going to share his insights on the topic and actually offer some practical realities from personal experience. So you get that combination of some connection and some reflection. So ultimately, this webinar is a catalyst for practical reflection that's going to lead to action, hopefully drawn from greater consciousness around the development of your own entrepreneurial mindset. So if growth mindset is the starting point, let's just recognize that there's a lot of words that are thrown around this topic of entrepreneurial mindset, of which growth mindset is a part, but we're looking at that extra trait, the extra level of entrepreneurial mindset. And I put this slide up simply to declutter some of the words that are used very interchangeably on the subject. But the bottom line is that traits at the bottom there, they can be difficult to change. They are a complex combination of behaviours that are typically embedded in who we are. The good news is that it's far more easy to actually look at attitudes and behaviours. They're much more malleable. And that growth mindset that we were looking at on the previous slide, those are the things that you know you can work on. You know you can change them, you can develop, etc. So by working on attitudes and behaviours, you can re-engineer traits. So why is it that an entrepreneurial mindset, the traits of entrepreneurial thinking are so important? Well, an entrepreneurial mindset is a superpower. In our experience, we see that it is a force that entrepreneurial leaders use to drive transformational change at every level in their organizations, in their communities, in their society. And it is about relentless personal growth. It is about wisdom gained from embracing failures and using that experience and determination to climb higher, which is obviously a goal that you will share with your engagement with Skills Development Scotland. So, okay, so there's some of the terminology, but actually, I think when we look at the traits of an entrepreneurial mindset, anyone who's done any research into this will recognize that there are many commentators on the topic, and it's very easy to feel bogged down, drowning in a never-ending list of traits, behaviours, attitudes that you should perhaps seek to emulate. So I want to keep this simple for this wee lunchtime session, and I've drawn a few insights from 2 or 3 respected leaders in the field. Some of you are doubtless aware of Bill Owlett from MIT. We work with him a lot in Scotland, and he's also worked with Rowena Barrett at Queensland University of Technology. And between them, they've done some great work that has distilled entrepreneurial mindset to just 3 traits. And I think that's a useful starting point for us today. I'm also going to draw some insight from JD Meyer. Some of you may know him as the former head of innovation coach at Microsoft under Satya Nadella. He's a great thought leader as well and offers some good insight on the topic. So a couple of quotes there to just get you thinking. But again, as we go through the next 3 slides, which talk about the traits of entrepreneurial mindset, I urge you to ask yourself the questions. Do I see this in myself? Do I see these traits showing up in my organization? More importantly, do I see the attitudes and behaviors in play that reinforce this trait? So the first of our 3 traits, of an entrepreneurial mindset is that of being solutions oriented. Entrepreneurial mindsets understand that pursuing and following through on something can lead to unforeseen opportunities. So they push themselves forward with a belief that they can achieve the desired outcome that they're looking for. They are solutions oriented, even when the conditions suggest otherwise. And this is because they build and reinforce self-belief by drawing support from like-minded, similar mindsets, entrepreneurial thinkers who they surround themselves with. This is an exercise in ensuring that you're not surrounded by the yes men. They are seeking out intentionally the mindsets who can create a community of positive influence, but also critical guidance. An entrepreneurial mindset welcomes criticism, but it also models it as it brings teams on and it develops people within their ranks, offering critical thought and appraisal, so that this is something that the entire organization develops a culture around. So with individuals who share their curiosity, you create a community of lifelong knowledge seekers. And this in itself creates a virtuous circle of support, which is in itself excited by change and evolution. In this environment, leaders with an entrepreneurial mindset accept challenge and diversity of opinion, and they offer it and model it, as I mentioned earlier. So think about this trait. How do you acknowledge and demonstrate appreciation of a solutions-oriented behavior or attitude in your organization? How do you ensure that this is highlighted as the kind of behavior and attitude that you want to kind of lean into in an entrepreneurial organization? Trait number 2 is all about adaptability. So an entrepreneurial mindset will build confidence to face challenges. It's absolutely a pre-existing expectation that things will change, and that's going to be okay. Their attitude to failure is one of gaining an opportunity to learn. Without losing sight of the objective, they learn and they pivot. They respond and they innovate in a repeating cycle of taking action, learning from the results, and the experience, and building out new solutions. They bake this process into the way that they act in their organizations, modeling behaviors that reinforce this trait. In terms of leadership style, interestingly, entrepreneurial mindsets lead to adaptable leadership that meets the needs of the organization as it goes through growth and change. Instinctively, there are changes that at times are about leadership and at times are more about management. But that experience is perhaps something that you guys will remember from the days of COVID, where the flexibility and responsiveness of our leaders really did demonstrate that at times it was around leadership and at times it was about focus on the management and delivering on what we're trying to do as a process to get through. So the entrepreneurial mindset seeks guidance from trusted advisors with a range of perspectives. So then again, it's not the yes men. They are challenging themselves by perhaps working with personal advisory boards or trusted individuals, whether this is formal or informal. They seek out the insight of people who think differently to themselves, who see beyond the horizon that they see and can perhaps anticipate what's coming. Change comes into your comfort zone when adaptability is a trait that you lead with as well. So adaptability is that second trait highlighted by Barrett and Owlett, which takes us on to the third of the 3 traits of an entrepreneurial mindset that we're talking about today. And the third is perhaps cheekily divided into 4 sections, but anti-fragility. This is about baking in an ability to avoid fragility. It's about strength, but it's about building resilience and robustness. And this trait talks, the commentators talk about heart, head, hand, and home. That heart piece of it is about is that courage, that courageousness to stay the course and show visible strength of conviction, keeping the eyes on the prize. there's some discussion on this that's, is it akin to grit? And grit falls into two categories. There's the grit and determination that's drawn from passionate conviction around clarity of purpose. That's great grit. And that's what we're talking about here, rather than that more negative, stubborn, dogmatic grit that says, we will obsessively pursue at all costs. But that heart, that courage of conviction is a part of anti-fragility that's built around clarity of purpose. Head is that preparation and planning that an entrepreneurial mindset has in place to ensure that when change occurs, when obstacles occur, rather than it being a ravine of uncertainty into which you might fall, it is simply an obstacle that you get your ladder out, you put it across, and you find your way across it. Because you've modelled it, you've simulated it, you've anticipated it. Entrepreneurial mindsets ensure that the head is used to build in anti-fragility. The third part is about switching from the head to the hand, turning the good thinking and the planning into action. It's about getting things done, avoiding analysis paralysis, perhaps. And such organisations are built with teams that have the ability to flex from the thing that they were doing into a different role or a different activity. And they also have the organisational capability to facilitate such change as and when it's required. And this final piece, home, this is what we've picked up on a couple of times already as we look at the community, the people you surround yourself with. But it's very clear to see that entrepreneurial mindset is characterized by leaders who invest in their networks, invest in the people that they bring around them, and it has a significant impact on their anti-fragility. It's really a superpower, and it's having a network in place that you understand, that you know, that knows you, that can challenge you, can critique you, and take your thinking to a new place because it offers new perspectives. Having that in place allows you to rapidly marshal or recruit the resources that you need, whether they be internal within your organization or external. But because you've got that web, that network already in place, you can rapidly marshal the resources that you need. And that is the focus of our third webinar, actually, because in this, high-speed world, technological developments, market expansions, business growth, it's all about speed of movement. And certainly that is an element of anti-fragility. So those are the three traits that are highlighted by these two commentators. Clearly, there are subheadings within each of those. But let's focus on the attitudes and behaviours that actually create these traits. And remember, it's the attitudes and behaviours that we have most impact on. They are the most malleable. So let's start here. This is actually drawn from some J.D. Meyer's work, and here we're talking about innovation attitudes and behaviours, where perhaps you are open to playing in a sandbox and experiencing change and challenges in non-critical environments, so that it becomes a norm to actually apply yourselves in an innovative way when it becomes mission critical. It is about taking calculated risks, but understanding what it is to calculate the risk, but being empowered to step out of your comfort zone to pursue the opportunities therein. It's about recognizing, celebrating, rewarding initiative when it's made. Think about where it shows up in your organization and how you acknowledge it. And in terms of developing a culture of attitudes and behaviors that lead to entrepreneurial traits, then actually the more you can find small opportunities to celebrate proactive orientation, for example, when people have seized opportunities, the more you can model the behaviors that you want that lead to the traits that you're after. It's definitely about teams and individuals and leaders being prepared to face the setbacks and recognizing that the setbacks build the resilience. And this is in no particular order, but obviously that clear vision is something that is a characteristic attitude and behavior of entrepreneurial leaders and teams. So we talked a little bit about attitude and behaviors there. The last thing I want to pick up on before we introduce you to the practical experiences of Grant Curry is actually looking at how creativity and innovative thinking can be brought into your organizations, brought into the way that you actually approach problems and opportunities in your world. Some of you might be familiar with De Bono's thinking hats. This is perhaps a little bit of an expansion of perspectives that you can use to embed creativity and innovative thinking. There's a suggestion of 10 different hats you could wear here, and a question that you might ask yourself about where these roles might exist in your teams and in your organization, how and when you personally might be wearing these particular hats, taking the role of the opportunity hunter, actively scanning the horizon for untapped opportunities, being the innovation driver. Is that something that sits with you? Does it sit within a team? Is there a recognized strength within specific individuals who can actually constantly challenge the status quo in a positive way? Risk takers. What is your attitude to taking risk? How do you show that attitude to risk taking and model it for others to adopt a similar sort of approach? Resilience building. As an organization, what is your approach? How do you organize yourselves as an organization when faced with setbacks and failures, knowing that the experience you have will lead to the bounce back ability of resilience that you're seeking? In terms of ambiguity, how do you embrace and thrive in situations that are filled with uncertainty in this world that we live in that is moving so quickly? And there are 5 other hats that Maya suggests. The adaptability champion. So when do you need to adapt to be the adaptability champion? How do you ensure that this is baked into your organization with perhaps individual roles assigned to individuals who are the kind of glue within different team structures? So how do you make sure that people have that emotional safety and security, that they know what their role is, but they also know how to actually step into a different set of shoes? Visionary leaders. Where are they in your organization? Are they only at the top of the tree, or actually do you identify them at different stages within the organization because they follow behaviors where they are able to inspire and guide the people around them? And you lift that and you show it as a model for emulation. Time master. Nothing sucks out the creativity and the innovative thinking than something that loses its momentum. So how do you ensure that you keep the energy in the room as you go through things within your own C-suite set of tasks, but also at every stage, at every level within your organization? The innovative thinker, open to new ideas and perspectives. Where's that insight coming from? How are you finding connections to people who think differently to yourselves? How are you stepping into situations where you perhaps have to apply your own problem solving and thinking to unfamiliar territory, to just train your brain, practice or develop that muscle of innovative thinking in non-mission critical settings? What are the behaviors and the cultural characteristics of the way you operate that nurture that? And finally, this one about the collaborative maestro. What steps do you take to cultivate productive collaborations, building strong relationships for shared success? We've talked about the home and the connection that you have with different people. That is something that entrepreneurial mindset give consideration to from both an internal perspective and an external perspective. And again, they look at it from the leader's perspective, but they also look at it from an entrepreneurial leadership development perspective as well. So my aim for this first part of the webinar was to give you some insights, some thoughts, some ideas that act as a framework for your own thinking. We'll obviously be sharing the slides with you, but the real value of this comes from the personal reflection that you do with this framework, with these ideas, so that you take a closer look at how this turns up in your own organizations. So, as you digest the information that I've shared there, and I appreciate it's a lot of information in a short period of time, but I'm really keen to make sure that we have a good 15 minutes to spend with Grant Curry as well. I am delighted that Grant is joining us today, and to give, by way of introduction, I know you've all had his biography, but to give you some insight, you know that he's the founder and managing director of Virtual Services Group, who provide facilities management services for more than 250 companies. It's a 10-year-old company, and the stated ambition that Grant is sharing is about scaling from 15 million to 30 million by 2028. So visionary leadership, clear guidelines on what he's actually aiming to actually achieve there. Those of you who have read Grant's bio will also have recognised that he is heavily involved with a philanthropic focus, which actually started some 6 years before his entrepreneurial journey, when his family suffered that unimaginable loss of Grant's 15-year-old daughter to vasculitis, which is a rare autoimmune disease, and maybe that's something to learn a little bit more about. So Grant, we met up a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed your approach to resilience and to building resilience in yourself and others. So I'm going to stop sharing this presentation screen and hope that Grant's cheery face will pop up on the screen instead. There he is. And we can begin a wee conversation. At the moment, I think you're muted, Grant. I think, are we hearing any?
Yeah. I think that's the first time I've ever been told I've got a cheery face, but thank you for that.
Well, you're smiling now. I'll take that as a cheery face. So, yeah, obviously we had a great conversation just a couple of weeks back, and I think it would be great now if we can just start by perhaps asking you to share a little bit about your journey for context, and really delve into what prompted you to start proactively reflecting on your own entrepreneurial traits. Can we start there?
Yes. I mean, I've always been interested from a very young age in business. I wanted to be self-employed probably from school. School was not a successful place for me academically. So when I left school, I went straight into business. And I think I could see a lot of those traits at that stage. I could see this perseverance to proceed with this plan, even though everybody was telling me not to. I was risk tolerant at that point as well, and I persevered and set up the company. And it didn't succeed, but I always see that as probably my university of life. I never went to university, but I saw that as an opportunity to learn from all the mistakes and failures. And I took a decision at that point to step out of setting up another business at that time, because there was a fear element involved with it. But what I did was I looked at those traits that I had and why that business failed, and I researched a lot of that background, what all the kind of key entrepreneurs that you can read about and watch videos on, what they were doing, what mindset did they have, what strategies did they adopt, because I had this still desire to go back in and start my own company again. But there was that opportunity. You were identifying opportunities throughout that time. I was quite disruptive in the workplace because I could see opportunities when I worked for other people. I had an impatience to get these things in place. I could model different scenarios and see basically where these situations could likely fail, and then we would have strategies to see how we could move those elements forward. You had resilience, that you were bouncing back from these setbacks with those changes. You were open to experimentation with various aspects of that, but you were quite disruptive in doing that. And I think a lot of people mentioned those traits to me as well as I was going through working for others. And it's when I lost my daughter that I think the fear dropped away. There was nothing you could then, at that stage, could come close to that situation. So I started to look at that point of going back into business. We set up the virtual services group. And I, at that stage, had really identified what the traits were that I possessed. And what I needed to look at to drive the business forward. What were my key strengths, basically? And what were the elements that I need to bring around me that complemented me and adapted with those skill sets. And we started up the virtual services group, and we scaled it very, very quickly in that time scale to 14 million. Well, we have a business platform, a business offering that is very changeable within the environment. It's affected by environmental factors and the economy and various other aspects. Contracts are won, contracts are lost. Your business is constantly going through change, adapting to those change, modeling the vision that you have for growth and how it changes, and what the next pathway has to be to get back on track to that growth. We have to be resilient because as you are in the facilities business, you will lose contracts but gain. So you have to be tremendously resilient in moving forward each day and driving that business to the next stage of growth. But we also are in a market that changes quite dramatically as well. So we've got a service culture that before it was just going in and fixing somebody's boiler or fixing their air conditioning, fairly straightforward. Now there's AI technology. Now there's the CAFM software that sits behind the services that we deliver and what clients expect from those changes. And that's a huge challenge for us to again get behind that and look at experimentation and start putting challenges to our team and to the business about how we adapt to the future of our industry. So it's constantly evolving with those traits.
Mm. And you're obviously able to share this insight and perspective now as a successful business leader of a company that's going to great places, etc. But if you cast your mind back to when you were that entrepreneurial founder and you were in that startup organization and you actually said, right, okay, I want to do that self-reflection. What were the practical steps that you took to do that? Because we look at that anti-fragility and we kind of talk about the heart, the head, the hand, the home, etc. And it's so easy to recognize that people get stuck between the head and the heart. We've thought about it. We've thought about what we're going to do, but then we've got to actually take action. And I'm curious how you tackled this as a startup organization and how you continue to ensure that this reflection is embedded as your organization grows and scales.
I think it's getting the right, right from the very beginning, it was about getting the right people into the business that, I wouldn't say criticize. You said earlier being a positive critic. And so, a team, having people that can be that positive critic and say, I can come up with a vision of where I want something to go. I can be very impatient about where I want to see the market to benefit from that vision. And I have a very simplistic view on how we get to that, from A to B. Then it takes that team around you to bring it into reality and say, well, no, timescales require this and we require to do it. So you need that person that can bring that vision into more a realistic term. But then you also need to understand what are your key traits, and complement that with your team, because you're never going to achieve it on your own. But, and I think seldom do a business rely on one person to get to that growth success. So you need that team around you. That team needs to be where you're not strong on those key elements. They're picking up on those aspects. By understanding your traits, understanding how you run that business and what those strengths and weaknesses are, you build a team around you you're giving them that autonomy. You're allowing them to almost have a safe culture around them for that resilience. The resilience is very much linked to fear. It's there about failure. It's getting those elements sorted first. How do we address failure and fear? And it's creating, and then that also is mental health. So it's creating that safe environment where they can make a failure. And they can bounce back from that, and they can understand how they can bounce back quickly so they can address that situation. And I think that then feeds into resilience and helps them to understand that I can bounce back quicker from a situation. Also allowing them to have that similar planning and modelling that you have as an entrepreneur, to be able to look down the line and say, this scenario could be affected by X. Therefore, if that happens, we need to look at another option, another pathway. And they've already planned out these aspects.
Yeah, and Grant, within that, you've talked about fear a couple of times there. You've talked about, the connection between fear and failure, addressing failure, building resilience, mental health. Do you feel that you have embedded in your organisation at this stage of its growth a set of behaviours, an attitude and a mindset that is clearly a part of the culture of your organisation, of how you face failure? And if so, what are some of the hallmarks of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think failure is something that everybody has to embrace it within the business, but they don't see it as failure. We see it as an opportunity. If we have a contract that has been out to tender, we may be unsuccessful with that. We need to look at how we adapt to that change. But rather than seeing it as, well, we've lost a contract, we've lost an opportunity, but we'll gain another, we'll gain another opportunity in the business. And it's going out and finding that opportunity and bringing that in. And that's where we need to channel their thoughts on it, rather than focused on, we've lost this element. It needs to be on finding the next opportunity, identifying it, bringing it in, and having the facilities to be able to deliver that opportunity successfully. And experimenting with new opportunities as well, and embracing the change. As you said earlier, adaptability. I think that's a key one for most people. There's a key trait about why you get up and do what we do. We need to instill those traits in others so that they are more risk tolerant, they are more resilient, they have this focus. And one of the key things I do with our team now is give them time away from the business to think. And that's probably the biggest superpower of our business, is we're in a very noisy and busy world. There's everything flying in at all times of the day. It's taking that time out to think strategically and to think where that opportunity is going to arise, or what technology we need to be ahead of the game on, or what operational processes we need to put in place. We also ask our team to look at very much that 1%, how you can make a small difference in the business, change that 1% for the client that will change things for all clients and for our internal team as well. But it's getting them to take that time away from the business, giving them that environment to make changes and experiment.
Yeah, that time away from the business is a really interesting one, isn't it? Especially if you are then playing in a different play park and you are exposed to different perspectives and different experiences, which help you perhaps join the dots when you come back into your more common environment.
And I think it's also changing the environment. I think it's moving people around the business as well. Therefore, at the end of the day, you have individuals in your team, in your senior team, that have experienced all aspects of your business, not just coming in and taking over account management or looking after the help desk. They are moving throughout and helping to problem solve, help to look at opportunities, and are helping to be obviously looking at that resilience within the teams of those other departments within the business. And I think that helps them to become a more rounded individual and have a better entrepreneurial mindset than what they would do if they were just focused on that one task they were brought to do.
I was going to say, actually, in building that adaptability and encouraging people to stand in the shoes of others and take different roles on, in itself, that needs an inbuilt resilience. And it perhaps brings us to a thought about how you recruit entrepreneurial mindset into your organization. What is it that you have learned over the years with your business, where you've started to perhaps improve your own skill, your own ability to spot entrepreneurial mindset and bring it into the organization versus develop it in-house as well? What are your views on that?
I think we need, first of all, we look for what the dynamic of that individual is within our team. And I've used the football analogy of, when you're building a team, we can't have everybody playing exactly in the same part of the team, or you're just never going to move it forward. So you first of all have to identify what that key role is that they're going to play, what those characteristics of that team member. I don't mean just the role that they're going to perform, but what the characteristics that they need to fulfill when they come into that slot within the business. For me, it has to be problem solving. Problem solving for an entrepreneurial mind is key. They have to see the opportunity and they have to come up with the solutions of the challenges that you'll be faced with. They have to be a fighter almost within that business, and I think that have that, you mentioned heart, almost have the lion heart about, not lying down to your first failure, not having that running mentality if there's a trough in the business, and only basically riding in the peaks. You need to look at somebody that's all rounded, that is there to, come good or bad, and is there to drive that business forward. So many people will just not have that resilience in them to go through those challenges that a business has. And I think that's another key trait that we're looking for, is how they can demonstrate that to us in scenarios that we get the comfort that they have that trait.
And on a really practical level, Grant, how do you actually find ways to get prospective new employers to demonstrate problem solving, to demonstrate that fighting spirit? How do you actually get new recruits to demonstrate that to you? And what, if anything, do you do when you are looking to elevate and develop people within the organization and you're, again, looking for those traits to show up?
Well, I think coming into the business, we have to give them scenarios, and it's almost live scenarios as to how they would deal with various situations. And that gives us a good insight into that person's abilities, their mindset, about how they would tackle those issues. And those answers are crucial. I think when you then come into the business and you're established in the company, it's giving people safe projects to work on, and giving them that recognition for the achievements that they've made. And this even the small successes, but I think it is very much a case of giving them that scope and the autonomy to take a project on and prove that they have got the abilities to do that. That's experimentation. You're experimenting with individuals in your business, and you're experimenting with strategy and with process to see what the traits are of those individuals. You're never going to know unless we stretch and give them those stretch opportunities within a company. And that's when we start to, and I'm always a firm believer in I don't think any entrepreneur would basically put their hand up and say we're great teachers. And I think I prefer to mentor our team by putting them in those situations. How I learned to deal with situations was being in them and dealing with them. Yeah. And that's what I look to our team to do. is to prove and demonstrate they have those abilities to problem solve, to be fairly resilient to the challenges and adaptable to those challenges. But a very positive belief in themselves as well is another key aspect. You're not going to be resilient unless you've got a very positive belief in your concept, your business, and in yourself. Yeah. And you have to have that overriding confidence.
And last question, Grant, because I'm conscious of time as well, but that experience of recruiting for entrepreneurial mindsets, as they're bringing that into the organization versus actually developing it within the team. We've all had, organizations where the person who's come through the door to do a specific role hasn't been asked to be entrepreneurial, hasn't been asked to be a leader, but actually there's something about them that you can see the potential and roll forward 10, 15 years and they're running the show. But what's your experience of actually seeing traits change? And what's been the ticket on it? What's really made the difference?
I think when you monitor and you're involved in your business and you're seeing individuals that have come into the business but are not showing any of those traits, nor have they been asked to come in and demonstrate those traits, you're, through what I was saying earlier, by giving a safe environment to develop in certain areas, you can see those traits, whether they are ticking those boxes for what you need in the business or we need to develop that further. Mm-hmm. I see people that have come in that have demonstrated something similar to what I probably did when I was out in working in other people's organizations, mm-hmm. that certain traits that were quite disruptive, but then you need to embrace those individuals and you need to look at how you harness that within your business and channel the best of that out of that individual. Or you lose them and they go off to do and start up something very similar. So
yeah.
Got to be able to retain that talent in the business and channel it. But it's identifying it at a very early stage.
Yeah. So know what it is you're looking for, but know what it is you want to build as well, and constantly keep your eyes open to see it and actually reward it.
I mean, you have to be. I think you have to be across your business in every aspect and every field that it's in, and you have to be involved with the team at all levels. And I don't see myself as the MD of the business and sits away in the offices. I like to be involved in asking questions, sometimes not visible, but sometimes I am, and I'm out asking questions on contracts and want to get to the source of an issue. And by understanding and asking those questions in the business, we start to pick up a lot of those traits on problem solving and how I overcame that issue and how we developed this innovation for the client, and or I have these ideas that I want to put in place for the client. And there is fantastic talent in our business and in other businesses that is probably untapped. And it's just looking about how you get out and ask those questions and unlock some of the detail behind your employees.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, listen, Grant, thank you very much for sharing some candid views there. I'm keeping half an eye on the Q&A, but I appreciate it's a quick lunchtime webinar for people, and I don't see any questions there. So hopefully we've given our audience food for thought and something to take away and actually do that personal reflection piece to start their own recognition of where they're strong, where there's perhaps weaknesses, where the opportunities for growth are in their own organizations. But Grant, thanks again for giving us your insight. Good luck on this growth to the 30 million. It's exciting, ones to watch. And that entrepreneurial mindset is going to get you there for sure.
Thank you very much. No, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Okay, so that really is where we are seeking to wrap up this session on entrepreneurial mindset. So Alistair, I'm going to invite you to come back into the room. I think I need to stop. Oh, no, I'm not sharing, am I?
You're not sharing. You're all good. You're all good.
But I hope that's been a useful a session, if a little of a whirlwind. But
No, thank you, Jules. Thank you very much indeed. And Grant, thank you very much indeed for your time and your insight provided today. Very interesting, and hopefully everyone who's attended today can take something from it. As Jules mentioned, you're obviously a shy bunch. There's no questions being posted, or either that, it's just the information's been so thorough, you don't need any more information. However, if you are looking to get in contact, again, going through the Employer Hub, employers.skillsdevelopmentscotland.co.uk, you can get in contact with the team and we can put you in contact with Jules if you have any questions. We'll be circulating the slides, and as I said earlier on, we'll be looking for some feedback as well. But nothing else more to do other than to thank everyone again for attending, and thank Jules and Grant for their time this afternoon. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Pleasure. Good luck, everybody.